Hello everyone. Today I'll be presenting on Seamus Heaney. My name is Daphne Macias. To begin with, Seamus Heaney is one of the most influential poets of the 20th century. He is known for his ability to merge the personal with the political in a way that speaks across generations. My presentation is not only going to focus on his life and work, but on how he uses poetry to respond to conflict, how he seeks understanding, and how he ultimately promotes healing through language. So to give you a brief biography of who Seamus Heaney is, he was born on April 13, 1939 in a small rural area of Northern Ireland called County Derry. He was the eldest of 9 children in a Catholic farming family. These early years on the farm had a profound influence on his poetry, especially his focus on nature and the rhythms of rural life. He won a scholarship to attend boarding school and later studied English at Queen's University of Belfast, where he was exposed to literature and political tensions of Northern Ireland. He became a lecturer and eventually held prestigious academic positions at Harvard and Oxford. In 1995, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, with the committee praising his works of lyrical beauty and ethical depth. He then later passed away in 2013, but his legacy as a poet, teacher, and voice of conscience lives on. So to give you some historical and cultural context, this subject is very important because in order to understand Heaney's poetry, it is important to understand the historical context in which he was writing. So during the late 1960s through the 1990s, Northern Ireland was involved in a violent conflict known as the Troubles. This was essentially a civil war between Protestant Unionists and Catholic nationalists. So Protestant Unionists wanted Northern Ireland to remain part of the United Kingdom, and on the other hand, the Catholic nationalists wanted to join the Republic of Ireland. So Heaney lived through this period, but unlike some of his contemporaries, he chose not to adopt a clear political stance. Instead, he used his poetry to explore the human cost of conflict, emphasizing empathy, introspection, and the complexities of identity over partisan rhetoric. So his refusal to take sides was very controversial, but it also gave his work a moral depth and a universal relevance. So, literary significance. Seamus Heaney's poetry stands out for how it weaves together memory, morality, and political reality. He's often described as a poet of both the soil and the soul. This can be someone who starts with the physical world and moves towards abstract and ethical reflections. What truly makes Heaney unique is his use of myth, archaeology, and language to create multiple layers of meaning. He could write about something as simple as digging potatoes and link it to a larger tradition of Irish labor, heritage, and resistance. His work addresses timeless themes such as violence, guilt, community, personal responsibility, but he always does this through it always does so through a poetic lens that is grounded in specific images, sounds, and stories. Talking about his early work, for example, Death of a Naturalist. So Death of a Naturalist was published in 1966. It is Heaney's first major collection. It includes poems that reflect his childhood in the Irish countryside and his developing awareness of the world around him. One of the most famous poems in the collection is Digging. In it, Heaney writes about watching his father and grandfather work the land with spades, while he, as a poet, chooses a pen instead. I think it is truly a beautiful metaphor for honoring tradition while forging a new path. I think the poem really captures the tension between respect for one's heritage and then the need to grow into your own identity. I think much of his collections deal with memory, the passage of time, and the innocence of childhood, which is later contrasted with darker and more political tone during his middle period. Political engagement, North, 1975. So by the time that North was published in 1975, Heaney's poetry had taken a much more political turn. So in this collection, he directly confronts the violence and polarization of the Troubles. But instead of writing polemical or explicitly political poetry, he draws on ancient Irish myths and archaeological finds, specifically bog bodies that had been discovered in Northern Europe. These preserved corpses of people who had been ritually executed became metaphors for contemporary political violence. One of the most striking poems in this collection is Punishment, where Heaney describes a young woman executed for adultery in ancient times, while also reflecting on how similar judgments and punishments play out in modern society. He acknowledges his own complicity as a passive observer, saying, I who have stood dumb when your betraying sisters called in tar. It is a chilling moment of self-awareness that asks readers to reflect on their own roles in systems of violence and injustice. And then moving on to The Cure at Troy, 1990. So The Cure at Troy is it's a dramatic adaptation of Sophocles, and it makes a significant moment in Heaney's career where he turns toward a more hopeful and reconciliatory tone. The play tells the story of a wounded warrior who is abandoned by his comrades and later called back to help win the Trojan War. So Heaney uses this ancient story to comment on the possibility of healing after betrayal and division. One of the most quoted passages from this work is, "History says don't hope on this side of the grave, but then once in a lifetime the longed for tidal wave of justice can rise up." So these lines became very iconic during the peace process in Northern Ireland, and they were actually quoted by both Bill Clinton and Joe Biden. So they exemplify Heaney's belief that while history can be tragic and full of injustice, poetry and by extension human imagination can offer hope for change. Major themes. So there is definitely several recurring themes in Heaney's work. The first is identity. So Heaney talks a lot about identity, both personal and cultural. He often writes about what it means to be Irish, to be Catholic in a Protestant dominated state, and to be a poet when the world demands politics. Another major theme that is very noticeable is nature and memory, especially in his early poetry. He revisits scenes from his childhood, not for nostalgia or anything like that, but to understand how the past shapes the present. Violence and guilt also appear as major themes, especially North, as he tries to grapple with how societies and individuals justify harm. Finally, language. Language is such a major theme when it comes to Heaney. Heaney believed in the power of poetry not just to describe the world, but to transform it. For him, I want to say language could be an ethical tool, a way to create understanding where there was conflict. Heaney's legacy. So Heaney's influence extends far beyond Ireland. He is read and admired across the world for his lyrical mastery and moral clarity. His role as a public intellectual, especially during times of crisis, helped shape modern literary discourse. He mentored younger poets and inspired writers to think seriously about the social function of art. Even after his death, his words continue to be cited in political speeches, academic discussions, and classrooms. His poetry remains relevant because it honestly deals with the universal, how we live, how we remember, and how we heal. So to conclude, Seamus Heaney is more than just a great poet. He is a moral and cultural voice whose work transcends his time and place. Through this blend of personal reflection, historical awareness, artistic excellence, he helps us understand the power of language in a divided world. His poetry doesn't offer easy answers, but it invites us to feel deeply, think critically, and imagine a better future. Therefore, my representation today has focused not only on Heaney's biography and major works, but also on how his writing invites us to engage with difficult issues, violence, identity, and reconciliation through the transformative lens of poetry. That's it for today for my presentation on Seamus Heaney. I hope you enjoy. Please, if you have any questions, you can comment. Thank you.